I didn't recognize my own face on the wedding invitation. The photograph was unmistakably mine. Same eyes, same smile, same small scar above the left eyebrow from when I fell off my bike at age 7. But the name underneath wasn't mine. It said, Rebecca Hayes, my twin sister, marrying David Carter, the man who had been my fiancé for 2 years before he disappeared from my life without explanation. I sat at my kitchen table at 6 in the morning, holding that invitation with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The coffee in front of me had gone cold. My cat was meowing for breakfast. The world outside my window was completely normal. But inside my chest, something was breaking. Because I was finally beginning to understand something I had refused to see for 10 years. My twin sister had not just stolen my fiancé. She had stolen me. My name is Claire Hayes. And this is the story of how I discovered that for an entire decade, my identical twin had been living a second life, using my name, my history, my face, and the man I had once loved. Let me start at the beginning. Rebecca and I were born 7 minutes apart. I came first. She followed. Our mother used to joke that those 7 minutes were the most peaceful 7 minutes of her life. Because the moment Rebecca arrived, the chaos began. We were identical in every way that mattered to strangers. Same dark brown hair, same green eyes, same height, same voice, same laugh. People used to mix us up constantly, even our own grandparents, but we were nothing alike on the inside. I was the quiet one, the reader, the girl who saved her allowance and got straight A's and dreamed of becoming a doctor. Rebecca was the wild one, the party girl, the one who failed math 3 times and stole our father's car at 16 and crashed it into a fence laughing. Our parents tried to treat us equally. They really did. But you cannot raise 2 people identically when one keeps building bridges and the other keeps burning them down. By the time we were 21, the gap between us had become a canyon. I was finishing pre-med at Boston University. Rebecca had dropped out of 3 different colleges and was waiting tables at a cocktail lounge in Miami. I was engaged to a brilliant young architect named David Carter, the love of my life. Rebecca was on her 4th boyfriend that year, none of them serious. But then something happened that I should have paid more attention to. Rebecca came to visit. She stayed at my apartment for 2 weeks in the summer of my final year of college. She met David. She came to dinner with my friends. She borrowed my clothes, my perfume, my favorite necklace. And then, one night, I came home from a late shift at the hospital and found her in my closet. She wasn't stealing anything. That's the strange part. She was trying things on. Standing in front of my full-length mirror wearing my white silk blouse, my pearl earrings, my engagement ring, which I had taken off because I was scrubbing in for a procedure that day. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. She didn't apologize. She just smiled at her reflection and said, "Wow, Claire, you really lucked out, didn't you?" I didn't know what she meant. 3 weeks later, Rebecca went back to Miami, and 1 month after that, David broke off our engagement. He didn't give me a real reason. He just said he had been thinking, and that he wasn't sure we wanted the same things anymore. He couldn't look me in the eye when he said it. He left a small velvet box with the engagement ring on my coffee table and walked out. I cried for 6 months. I dropped out of pre-med. I moved to a different city. I became a pharmaceutical researcher instead of a doctor. I dated people I didn't love. I went to therapy. I tried to forget him. And for 10 years, I almost succeeded. Until that wedding invitation arrived. Now, here's the thing. Rebecca and I had not spoken in those 10 years. After our parents died in a car accident, within 3 years of David leaving me, Rebecca had attended the funeral, taken her share of the inheritance, and disappeared. No phone calls, no emails, no birthday cards, nothing. I assumed she was off in some new city, drinking too much, dating new men, living the chaotic life she had always wanted. I had grieved the loss of my sister in some way, accepted it, and moved on. So when this wedding invitation arrived at my apartment, addressed to Claire Hayes in handwriting I instantly recognized as Rebecca's. My first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion. Why would she invite me to her wedding after a decade of silence? And why was she marrying David? I read the invitation 3 times. The wedding was set for 6 weeks from the date I received it. At a small chapel in Charleston, South Carolina. The reception at a private estate. RSVP to a number I had never seen before. I did what any rational woman would do. I called the number. A woman answered. Her voice was professional, polished. She introduced herself as the wedding coordinator. I said, "Hi, this is Claire Hayes. I'm calling to RSVP for the Hayes-Carter wedding." There was a pause. Then she laughed nervously and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you're already on the guest list as the bride." The phone almost slipped out of my hand. I forced my voice to stay calm. "I'm sorry, can you repeat that?" "You're the bride," she said slowly. Rebecca, you're getting married in 6 weeks. Are you feeling all right?" I hung up. I sat there in complete silence for an hour, because I had just realized something so disturbing, so impossible, that my brain refused to process it at first. The wedding coordinator had thought I was Rebecca, but she had also called me Claire, because Rebecca was telling people her name was Claire Hayes. She had been using my name. The one thing I knew for certain was that I needed to find David. I had not spoken to him in 10 years. I didn't even know if he still lived in Boston. But I remembered the name of his architecture firm. I called them at 9 in the morning. I asked to speak with David Carter. The receptionist told me he had moved to Charleston 4 years ago to start his own firm. I asked if she could give me a contact number. She hesitated, then said, "Are you a client, ma'am?" I said, "I'm a family friend from Boston. I'd like to send him a wedding gift." She gave me the number of his Charleston office. I called him directly. When he picked up the phone and said David Carter speaking, I almost cried just from hearing his voice again. I said, "David, it's Claire." There was a pause. Then he said, in the warmest voice I had heard in a decade, "Claire, hi, are you okay? Are you nervous about the wedding?" Silence. He thought I was Rebecca. I sat there, holding the phone, listening to him talk to me as if we had been together for the past 10 years. He asked me about my trip to New York for the bachelorette party. He told me he had picked up the wedding bands. He laughed about something his mother had said at the rehearsal dinner planning lunch. He thought I was the woman he was about to marry. And then he said the sentence that destroyed me completely. "I love you, Claire. I'll see you at home tonight." I whispered, "I love you too." And I hung up. I sat on my kitchen floor and sobbed for an hour, because I finally understood what had happened. 10 years ago, when Rebecca came to visit me and tried on my engagement ring in my mirror. She wasn't being curious. She was practicing. I bought a plane ticket to Charleston that afternoon. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't tell my best friend, my therapist, or even the police, though I now realize I should have. I checked into a small inn 3 blocks from David's office. I rented a car. And I waited. The next morning, I parked across the street from his firm and watched the front door. At 8:47 a.m., she walked in. My twin. Wearing a beige cashmere coat and pearl earrings. Carrying a coffee for 2. Her hair was cut exactly like mine had been in college. She was even wearing the perfume I used to wear. She walked up to David's building, kissed the security guard on the cheek as he held the door open for her, and disappeared inside. She was me. She was wearing my old life like a stolen dress. I followed her for 3 days. She and David lived in a beautiful colonial home in a historic part of the city. They had 2 dogs. They went to a yoga studio together on Saturday mornings. They had brunch at a small French cafe where the waiters all knew them by name. By name. The name they used was Claire. Everyone in that city, David's friends, his family, his co-workers, the neighbors, the dog walker, the priest who was about to marry them, knew her as Claire Hayes. I don't know how she did it. I don't know what documents she forged or what stories she told. I don't know how she became me. But I knew one thing. I had to stop the wedding. And I had to do it on the wedding day. Not before. Because if I confronted Rebecca privately, she would lie. She would manipulate. She would convince David that I was the imposter. She would make a phone call, change a story, vanish before sunrise. Rebecca was good at running, but she could not run from a chapel full of 200 witnesses. 6 weeks later, I walked into that chapel in Charleston. I wore a simple navy dress. I sat in the back row. I didn't speak to anyone. The wedding coordinator, the same woman I had called weeks earlier, gave me a confused look but said nothing. The ceremony began. David walked down the aisle, smiling at his groomsmen. The music began. The doors at the back of the chapel opened, and Rebecca walked in a stolen white dress, wearing a stolen name, about to marry a man who thought she was somebody else. She walked down the aisle. The priest began to speak. He said, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the marriage of David Charles Carter and Claire Elizabeth Hayes." I stood up. The chapel went silent. 200 faces turned toward me. I walked slowly down the aisle, past every guest, past Rebecca's bridesmaids, until I was standing 3 feet from my twin sister. She turned, and the look on her face, the moment she realized I had come, was the moment 10 years of silence finally broke. David stared at us. His eyes moved from Rebecca's face to mine, then back to Rebecca, then back to mine. His mouth opened. He whispered, "What? What is happening?" I turned to him calmly. I pulled out my driver's license, my passport, my birth certificate, and a copy of the engagement ring receipt from 10 years ago, which I had kept all this time. I placed them all on the altar in front of him, and I said, "David, my name is Claire Hayes. I was your fiancé 10 years ago. The woman standing next to you is my twin sister. Her name is Rebecca, and for the past decade, she has been pretending to be me." The chapel erupted. Rebecca tried to speak. She tried to laugh. She tried to call me crazy. She tried to grab David's arm and tell him to ignore me. But David's face had gone white. He looked at Rebecca and asked very quietly, "What's your real name?" She didn't answer. He asked again, louder. She didn't answer. His mother stood up from the front row, holding her hand over her mouth. David turned to me. He said, "Claire, I need to see those documents." I handed them to him. He looked at the ring receipt, the one he had purchased 10 years ago for me, and he started to cry. Right there, at the altar, in front of everyone. He looked at Rebecca and said the words that shattered her completely. "I'm so sorry. I have been engaged to the wrong sister." What happened next is the part most people find hardest to believe. Rebecca was arrested 2 days later, not because David pressed charges, but because the wedding coordinator, the priest, the bank where she had opened joint accounts, and the realtor who had sold them their home all came forward at once. She had committed identity fraud, financial fraud, marriage fraud, and forgery across multiple states for 10 consecutive years. The trial took 8 months. Rebecca was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. David and I did not get back together. I want to be honest with you about that, because I think you deserve the truth. We tried. For about 3 months we tried. We met for coffee. We met for dinner. We sat in the same parks, talked about the same things we used to talk about, looked at each other across the same kind of restaurant table. But too much had been stolen, not just by Rebecca, by the years. We weren't the same people we had been at 21. He had built a life with someone who looked like me but wasn't me. I had built a life around the wound of losing him. The version of us that could have worked had died a long time ago. So we said goodbye. Gently this time. Properly this time. The way we should have said goodbye 10 years earlier, if Rebecca had not stolen the ending from us. Today, 3 years later, I am married to a wonderful man named Daniel. He is a marine biologist. He has never heard of Rebecca, and he never will, because some chapters don't need to be read aloud. I have a beautiful daughter. I named her Joy. I think about my sister sometimes. I won't pretend I don't. She still has another 4 years left in prison. She has written me 3 letters. I have not opened any of them. Maybe one day I will. Maybe one day I will be ready to ask her why. Why she chose my life instead of building her own. Why she thought she could wear my name like a costume forever. Why the 7 minutes between us in the womb, those 7 small minutes, somehow turned into 30 years of resentment. But not yet. For now, all I know is this. You can lose almost anything in this world and survive it. You can lose love. You can lose years. You can even lose the person who shares your face. But you cannot lose yourself. The moment Rebecca tried to become me, she lost the only person she ever truly was. And I finally became the woman I was always supposed to be. If this story moved you, please subscribe. It helps us bring you more stories like this one. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever discovered something about a family member that changed everything? Because at Silent Karma Stories, we believe that every truth, no matter how long it takes, eventually finds the light.